When the Riddler, a sadistic serial killer, begins murdering key political figures in Gotham, Batman is forced to investigate the city's hidden corruption and question his family's involvement. The Batman is created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, adapted to written screenplay by Peter Craig and Matt Reeves, with Matt Reeves directing The Caped Crusader, with Robert Pattinson as Batman and Paul Dano as the Riddler. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on your bell notifications. And to returning subscribers, leave a like on the video, it always helps out. But without further ado, let's talk about the long-awaited, the long-anticipated Batman. The Batman. Over this past weekend, I had the pleasure and the enjoyment of seeing this incredible film twice in IMAX. First time with friends, second time with family and relatives. The first time, I loved it. The second time I watched it, I loved it even more. And to further add, this is the best cinematography that we have ever gotten in a live action Batman film. This film had the focus and the blur of prisoners. The Arri Alexa Elif anamorphic camera lens makes Gotham look weary and defeated. And this camera lens creates a window into the mindset of the broken Bruce Wayne, with Robert Pattinson telling multiple emotions with just his eyes. Greg Fraser and Matt Reeves should be applauded for their artistic vision of Batman. This film was everything that test audiences said it was. It's dark, it's brutal, it is definitely the darkest Batman that we have gotten ever. Within the span of this character's existence. Like, this pushes it. This pushes the envelope all the way. This film had the brutality of Zodiac, No Country for Old Men, and Seven, and it had the psychological, intense dialogue of Silence of the Lambs and Mindhunter. It was the real deal. It also had the realistic violence of Denis Villeneuve. There are two scenes in this film that should be analysed from writers, actors, filmmakers. Matt Reeves really did concentrate on how was he going to be able to tell a captivating detective story, and also a somewhat of a indie coming of age story for Bruce Wayne. An absolutely amazing soundtrack from Michael Giacchino. Wow, absolutely phenomenal. I'm currently listening to the whole soundtrack. I'm halfway through it, and it is hauntingly beautiful and epic. This film had one of the best moments that I've ever experienced watching an IMAX film. That Batmobile scene, forget what you've seen in the trailers. There's so much more added spice when you see the film, what they put in that sequence. The introduction of that Batmobile in IMAX, my life had peaked. It felt like the whole theatre was just about to just explode from that Batmobile's exhaust pipe. Unbelievable. Let's address the elephant in the room, Robert Pattinson. Man, this guy is an absolutely incredible actor. He is fantastic. And I think his performance goes hand in hand with what Matt Reeves' vision is. It's so unique and different, this interpretation of Batman. The idea of Batman prowling for his next victim and methodically thinking who he has to choose. You know, it really does dive into the apathetic side of his mind. And it just really does go to show that this film is on that sense of realism. If somebody's has lost a loved one, how would it affect them in a sense? And this film really dives deep into that aspect, into how truly flawed Bruce is as a person. Um, and the idea of Batman not only being this force of nature, but also him being this somewhat of a paranormal entity to him, especially with how Matt Reeves directs the opening prologue of the film, which was incredible. And the more that I think about this interpretation of Batman, it does make me think a little bit more depthly about him in a sense. I mean, this could be me clutching at straws, but it's like there's almost something paranormal about him. Now, when I say this, it's like he's in year 2 of being Batman, but this film dives into heavy aspects of him being a detective alongside Gordon, which we're going to get into. But after 2 years, I mean, it's not explained how long before he starts fighting crime. How much intensively was he looking to be into a detective? But from what I'm seeing from the film, it's only been 2 years where he's been, and it just makes me, it's really odd, and it's really like creepy in a sense that he knows all of this information in the span of 2 years fighting crime. And I'm like, he creeps me out. Like, how could you learn that much in 2 years? Like, I'm expecting if you're going to be a detective, you're going to have years of knowledge and learning and education, And it creeps me out a little bit that he knows so much within 2 years, especially when he's out on the crime scene and things like that, which I think was a brilliant touch. And it makes him feel, more than just a man, which was brilliantly illustrated in the film. And with that, we've got James Gordon in this film, this new telling from Matt Reeves. And the relationship between Gordon and Batman, they really did exude that feeling of Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. And in other tellings of Batman, we've seen Commissioner Gordon always pledging his alliance to the police department, and in the tellings of Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League, get that straight, and The Dark Knight, those two interpretations of those characters, they tolerate Batman. It's like what they really know what they're doing is wrong, but they, because he's the one to be 2 steps ahead of everyone, they just give him the information anyway. But they really know that there could be a possibility where they could get in trouble. With this Batman, this film, you see Gordon, he is just in over his head, like Batman in this film. Like, there's no filter like, oh, we could get caught, we could, he's being just as engrossed as Bruce in this film. And in a sense, you can totally see within their 2-year relationship that they've had, they really bounce off each other well. And in a way, this Commissioner Gordon, he looks up to Batman and what he's doing. It's almost like as if he knows that doing it the vigilante way gets more things done than in the police department. And I think it's an interesting fire and ice concept between those two characters. Now let's talk about the Riddler. Boy, was he disturbing. And as we know, his outfit's based on the Zodiac Killer. And he's got that same apathetic kind of motivation that we saw with John Doe in Seven. And one thing that I would like to say from... this is just relating back to me now, but There's a saying, and it comes from Israel Adesanya, a UFC world champion. And he says, it's okay to drink from your Kool-Aid, but don't get drunk off it. And I'm going to drink from my Kool-Aid because I said in my reaction to the Vengeance video, and I relayed a couple of my thoughts in that video, that in this film we are going to see how Bruce is connected to the first person ideology of the Riddler. And what do you know if you've seen the film? Come on, come on now. If that's not worthy of a like on this video, I don't know what is. Because if any other motherfucker said that, they'd be saying, oh, this guy's brilliant. Yeah. I'm just saying, can I have my credit where it's due, please? Anyway. But yeah, the Riddler, he was menacing. His traps were like similar to like Saw, which was like, man, and his introduction was chilling, to say the least. It was that moment that was similar to The Dark Knight, where we were introduced to Heath Ledger's Joker. But his one just had an overbearing sense of just dread and just creepiness to him. The Catwoman in this film, played by Zoe Kravitz, she surprised me. I was not expecting that the level of her being three-dimensional, her character development and her character arc. I was not expecting all of those elements. And it was a surprising touch that was added to the film, and it just made everything just mend together and be brilliant. There is one line of dialogue that was in this film that came from her now. And it's been one of those lines of dialogue that I've been thinking about. And I've also been thinking about it from her perspective. And the more that I actually think about it, it makes sense. You know? And I know people amongst media and certain audience members heard that line and were like, come on, does that make sense? But from her perspective, it's all that she's known. She was sexy, but at the heart of it, this Catwoman, she's oddly enough got a heart of gold in her, you know? Where, you look her from the outside and you see her being pulled from arm's length in different directions. But those conversations that Bruce and her have, you really start to understand who she really is. And I think that was a beautiful touch from Matt Reeves. After my first experience watching the film, I was sitting in my seat and then I saw Colin Farrell in the end credits, and I went, Colin Farrell? Was he in the film? And I went, oh, he was the Penguin, right? And then the second time I watched it, this was with my family, and my mum turned to me when she saw Penguin on screen, and she said, is that Robert De Niro? Man, that was so funny. And then later on that evening, I showed a picture of the before and after of Colin Farrell without the makeup and when he had the makeup, and I showed my dad. And he said, wait, what? That's Colin Farrell? I said, yeah. He said, that's unbelievable. And look, I genuinely believe now what Colin Farrell was saying in that Fandango interview. Like, they put the makeup on me and I wasn't even there. Like, of course he was there, but that makeup, the aesthetics they put on him, that just completely transformed him into that character of being the Penguin, you know. And then you put that New York American accent on, and you just do not know that it is him. As a matter of fact, if nobody looked up the cast and crew credits, you wouldn't even know that it was him. And I got duped because I knew he was already in the film. But then when it had finished, and then I saw his name, I went, oh my God, yeah. what great performance, and I'm looking forward to his TV series as well. Gotta say, this is some of the best acting that I've seen in a comic book movie. It really is right up there. The action was absolutely top notch from beginning to end, and it is a weird phenomenon with this film, because if you were to actually get somebody to show you the action sequences that are happening in this film, I reckon they're only about, each one of them maybe 1 or 2 minutes long, but because Matt Reeves has got a brilliant understanding for suspense and character development, when those action scenes happen, they have more of an impact because the build-up of all these characters are brilliant, you know. And with that being said, this is a Batman where I'm pretty sure this is a Batman where he says the least amount of dialogue, but you can tell everything Robert Pattinson is thinking with that 1 million-yard stare he's got in his eyes. You know, you feel the torment, you feel the torture, you feel the trauma he's gone through. And this is a Batman that is completely more happy to... His psychosis is completely gone in this film. This is a film where really we are watching a psycho dressed as a bat, beating criminals, and not thinking about his own well-being whatsoever. So in the future, it's going to be an interesting development to see how is he going to become that persona of Bruce Wayne. And I love how Matt Reeves chooses that being Bruce Wayne ain't just going to happen overnight, you know. And I feel like some of the other adaptations of Batman have just kind of got over and done with within 30 minutes of a runtime within a film, in maybe the first, going into the second act. But when you're talking about a character that's gone through all of those elements of, you know, the pain that he's had to ensue, is that going to happen within 30 minutes? It's going to be a more lengthy process to it. And again, the relationship between Bruce and Alfred is really tormented as well, because Andy Serkis, that Alfred, it's up to him to look after Bruce, but he's more obsessed with getting himself into all types of hoopla and beating criminals and potentially getting hurt. And he's thinking, so Alfred's thinking about his father's legacy, and then he's thinking about Bruce as well. And you see that this is a completely different relationship that we've seen with other films, and that it's going to take time for them to mend those wounds between each other. And by the time we get to the end of this Batman film, we see a really interesting character from the beginning to the end, and Bruce understands that he has to become more. And this is a Batman that isn't even trained by the League of Shadows. This is how dark this film is. And he just learns how to fight by being on the streets. And he's already brutal enough in this film. Just think about how badass he's going to be once he trains even more and he, gets to train with the League of Shadows. This is a Batman that's only been, on the streets 2 years or so, and being being trained by Alfred as well. Imagine what a beast he'll become when he's trained by the League of Shadows as well. This is the quickest 3-hour film I've ever watched. It felt like 2 hours. And like I said, my first time I loved the film. The second time I watched it, I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. And I can understand some of the consensus with watching this film, because you have to be on it. It is a detective story as much as it has its elements of Batman and the action that's in it. So at any moment, if you drop the ball, if you're not paying attention for one lapse of a second, you can miss a vital detail. And when at my second experience watching this film, I was noticing things, especially about the Riddler, things that went in the background. And, you know, I would definitely say this: if you enjoyed watching this film with your first experience, go and watch it a second time, because your second experience, you're on the ball. You know what's happening, and you're starting to piece it a little bit more all together, because, you know, this film done something really brave with having a new telling of Batman and have it as this serial killer survival horror, you know, take of the character, you know, and dialogue can feel a little bit heavy at times, but, you know, but definitely after when you've seen it a second time, you really wholesomely love it for what it is. So my first time, my rating was a 9, but this time it's a 10 out of 10. And I've been seeing a lot of people comparing it to The Dark Knight. I don't know. I mean, Dark Knight is a 10 out of 10, but that's a mother of all films, The Dark Knight. And I feel it's actually a little bit unfair to be already comparing the Batman to The Dark Knight already. We've only got one film from Pattinson. I want to see how his character's going to evolve in the sequel and the trilogy. And to add, with this trilogy of Batman, we're going to be getting an Arkham series, we're going to be getting a Penguin series, even potentially a Catwoman series, which no doubt is going to be confirmed very soon, because this film is making a load of money. And, you know, it'd be stupid for Warner Brothers not to strike whilst the iron's hot, you know. So guys, 10 out of 10. This film's going to be inducted into my Champions Academy. Absolutely astounding. Please watch this film. And this film is a miracle, really, because it's going to make filmmakers, it's going to give them the inspiration to tell their story, you know, because as much as this is a comic book film, it feels more like it's an auteur film, you know. It's a film that's trying to, you know, change the perspective of audiences and how they view a story. So definitely watch it. Please, people, let me know in the comments, what did you think of The Batman? Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're new, check the description for more content. And also, at the end of the month, I will be in a short film, issue-based short film for Tourette's, and I can't wait to get started on that as well. But guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.